All right, so we're going to wrap up Unit 8, looking at Section 8.9, which is going to deal with patterns in evolution. So we're going to look at the history of major events in the world that cause major effects on organisms, and we'll also look at some different types of evolution as we move through this. So convergent evolution is something that we've talked about. Organisms that share common traits, though they may not share a recent common ancestry. So, for instance, you have there both sharks and dolphins, and an ancient type of reptile, water-dwelling reptile. And as you can see, is they all have similar structure, similar characteristics, but they do not share a similar or closely related common ancestor. So even though physical traits is a great way to kind of look at how closely related an organism is to another organism, and it's not always the gold standard, so to speak. There can be some situations where those organisms are not closely related at all. Divergent evolution is the other side of this, is when many organisms share a single common ancestor. Another vocab term there is adaptive radiation, which is another name for divergent evolution. And this usually occurs following a mass extinction episode, which we're going to talk about some of those in the next couple of slides. So there are many niches. Niches, remember, is a role in the environment. In Unit 9, we'll focus a lot more on niches. There's many roles in an environment that need to be filled by organisms, and populations will change over time to fill those roles. So an example there is Darwin's finches. We go back to those quite often. And another example is going to be after the extinction episode of the dinosaurs, mammals were allowed to then flourish and evolve to fill many of the niches that the dinosaurs left. And mammals have continued in those roles all the way up till current or present day. Coevolution, another review vocab term, is when two species change together to match each other's adaptation. So the example here in the picture, you'll see a giant sphinx moth has evolved a very long proboscis so that it can pollinate the ghost orchid, which has evolved a very long nectar spur, it's a lot longer or deeper to get to where the nectar is not nectar, should be nectar, is housed. Extinction is when a species is no longer living in the wild. Ecological extinction is when a species is living, but it is so small in numbers that it is no longer significantly within its community. It's no longer significant, rather, within its community. So a species will become extinct if it isn't interacting with its community, and a community can become damaged if this event happens as well. Mass extinction is an event that causes a worldwide extinction of many different species. So let's look at the rate of evolutionary change. Gradualism is the gradual change over time of a population, and this is going to be a slow and steady change in genetics, which will give change to physical traits over time. Catastrophism is the idea that changes occur very rapidly due to some large-scale extinction event or other large-scale events that forces organisms that can survive the event to adapt quickly. Punctuated equilibrium, evolution occurs with long periods of stasis, and stasis is slow to no change at all. And this is followed by periods of rapid change. So usually after a massive event, a massive extinction event, or other type of event, you'll have quick change, and then you'll have an area of stasis, and then another area of quick change, so on and so forth. So you can see, compare and contrast the two different types of change here between gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. All right, so let's look at the Earth's timeline over the last 700 million years, and then let's look at some of these major events that have happened that has caused organisms to evolve and change and adapt. So the Precambrian time, the life in the Precambrian time developed from unicellular to more complex multicellular organisms. So this goes back to what we were talking about with the origins of life in 8.8. The first organisms would have been very simple cells, prokaryotes that were anaerobes, and they were photosynthetic. These organisms were soft body, so there's very few fossils that exist from this time period, and a lot of these organisms did not have a whole lot to do with a lot of sunlight due to UV rays. So very simple life from um, the ancient gas or the gases that were found in the ancient ozone layer or atmosphere rather, not ozone. Then there's the snowball Earth theory, and this is the theory that the Earth completely froze over at one point in time, very early in the Earth's lifespan, limiting life to the deepest parts of the ocean where it was warm. And this event ended the Precambrian time. As the Earth began to thaw, the Earth entered the Paleozoic era, and this era began with the Cambrian explosion. And this is where life began to fill many niches that was left available after the snowball Earth period ended. Fish evolved, and then amphibians as the first vertebrates to walk on land. So during the Paleozoic era, after the first major snowball Earth event, we began to see land-dwelling organisms and more organisms that could live towards the surface of the water. Pangaea, of course, Pangaea was a supercontinent that formed towards the end of the Paleozoic era. This caused mass extinction of many species as large deserts formed and shorelines were less common. Uh, as all of these continents coming together, ecosystems changed, climates changed. What may have once been a shoreline around an ocean, very lush type rainforest environment, may have all of a sudden became a desert because there was no more access to that shoreline. So most non-aquatic life on Earth was destroyed due to this, due to the massive change in climates. Then we have the Mesozoic era. Species that could live away from the water, reptiles and mammals evolved during this time. This is the time when dinosaurs populated the Earth and mammals were tiny rodent-like creatures. Impact theory. So the extinction level event that likely ended this time period was a giant impact from an asteroid or a comet. Most life on Earth became extinct, leaving many open niches. So of course, the impact theory is caused an ice age event, because of the ash clouds blocking the sun. Earth froze over, and of course, we do know that reptiles rely on external factors to regulate body temperature. So, extreme cold is not a good thing for reptiles, which caused many of the dinosaurs to die off. Mammals, however, are endothermic, were able to found ways to keep their bodies warm enough to survive the event. And this gives way to the Cenozoic area, which allowed mammals to begin to develop and evolve to fill the niches that were left open by the reptiles. So large mammals and large predatory birds filled the Earth's niches that were left by the reptiles. And primates also evolved, and the first ancestors of humans began to populate the Earth. And this is the end of Unit 8. There's a form that goes with this. Please complete that form. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.